Hi, it's Dwyer. It is Sunday morning, April 10th, 2022. GamblersAdvisory.com, a free site. BettingAngle.us, a free site. Let's talk about Golovkin's win over Murata. But first, remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, let me just say, there were a few great fights this weekend. We'll try to get to some of these other fights in other videos. But let's focus on Golovkin because he's a historical middleweight. Understand there are very few fighters in the sport today where you look at the fighter and you think to yourself, this guy is one of the very few who have fought at this level in this division. Now, middleweights have some huge names in history. Carlos Monzon, Marvin Hagler, Bernard Hopkins. If you want to go way back, Stanley Ketchel, who's really more of a folklore type person, but he did drop Jack Johnson, who was then the heavyweight champion of the world. To me, Golovkin belongs with those names. I've personally only seen him lose once, and it wasn't to Canelo, it was to Derevianchenko. I understand. There is a block of you, a sizable group who believes that he won that fight, right? Officially he did. I would question the decision. But I haven't seen him lose otherwise. And understand, this guy in title fights has a very high KO percentage. Well, let's talk about his fight in Japan, in Murata's backyard. Now, let me just say, excellent finish by Golovkin. He's dominant the last 3 rounds. KOs, though, cause amnesia. I believe if you're a Golovkin watcher, if you're thinking about where Golovkin goes from here, he's scheduled to fight Canelo, I would question whether that fight ever takes place. I believe the casinos are very off on the Bivol versus Canelo fight. I think Bivol beats Canelo. I believe Bivol has fought a guy who, based on styles, for Bivol is at least as tough as Canelo, and that's Joe Smith, who right now has a share of the light heavyweight title, and who, quite frankly, moves better than Canelo. Right? I think Bivol's going to beat Canelo, but we'll see. I understand I'm one voice out there. There are many others who feel very differently. But this fight, the first 3 rounds, are a must watch because the blueprint is out on how to beat Golovkin. Right? The author of that blueprint, there are a few of them. Canelo in the rematch. Derevianchenko, who I believe beats Golovkin. Let's go back to a fight that I used to mention a lot here online, and Golovkin people were upset. This is when Golovkin was viewed as a world beater. Kasim Uma used this blueprint too. If you come inside on Golovkin, I know that sounds crazy, doesn't it? Guy with a higher KO percentage, why would I want to come inside against heavy power? But if you come inside on Golovkin, if you don't allow him to extend his arms or to back up, in other words, you have to come inside in such a way where he has nowhere to go. Right? His back's up against the ropes. Or you're going too fast for him to back up. Golovkin's not a good clincher. Right? And if you go to his body, you can have success. Especially if you mix in the body shots with hooks to his head. In other words, you want to chase the puncher. that works against this guy. That's evident in the first 3 rounds of this fight. So please, don't key on the last 3. Those will look very familiar to you. Right? Golovkin teeing off on an opponent. Right? Landing straight rights, landing left hooks behind the guy's guard. Look, we've seen that before. But I can tell you, even after looking at the Canelo rematch and the Derevianchenko fight, I haven't seen an opponent attack Golovkin early in a fight. And I mean attack him the way Ryota Murata does here. Right? Murata, folks, is on his front foot the first 3 rounds. He is aggressive. In a bit of a shocker, he's stronger than Golovkin. I mean physically stronger. Right? Whatever you think about the punching power, and Murata has an excellent right hand. Whatever you think about the punching power, Murata looks bigger and looks stronger than Golovkin. And more importantly, he's landing. Triple G is 40. Folks, the first 3 rounds of this fight, Triple G looks 40. He's getting cuffed around. Some of the shots land so flush. At the moment of impact, you're wondering whether Triple G is going to survive the shot. Right? Murata is coming in. I told you Murata has a great right hand. Now, defensively blessed guys would force Murata to beat them with plan B. In other words, you're not going to hit Pernell Whitaker with a great right hand early in a fight if everyone knows you had the great right hand before the fight. Right? Pernell would come out, he'd be staring at that right hand. You would have to beat him with something else. Here, Triple G is so hurt. I don't care what the facial expression says. Read the body. He's so hurt by some of Murata's left hands that he starts getting hit early in this fight when he's fresh. In other words, the fight's just started. There's no he's fatigued, his stamina started to fail him. No, theoretically, he has full stamina. But yet in the first 3 rounds, he's getting hit by Murata's plan A. His right hand up top. Right, folks, there's a moment here where you're watching the first 3 rounds and you're worried for Golovkin. Because no one wants to see a great champion or former champion beaten up in his last fight. Right? This started to look like Larry Holmes against Ali. This started to look like Joe Smith, who I mentioned earlier, against Bernard Hopkins. Right? The older guy was getting beaten up. So let me just say this. Because Murata was able to land shots, and because this film, and I'm talking about the first 3 rounds, are so jarring that Golovkin himself, I'm sure, is going to watch it several times. And he's going to have to realize, you know what, my reflexes have dimmed. Right, folks? He's not defensively blessed in this fight. He's getting cuffed around. So let's say a third fight against Canelo takes place, right? And you're going to have to look at the fine print on that fight, right? Because Canelo's next fight's at 175. This fight against Murata is 160. How confident are you in Golovkin going up to 168? Or in Canelo dropping down from 175 to 168. Right, so you're going to have to key on the fine print. But the point I'm going to make here is, believe it or not, for that third Golovkin-Canelo fight, your best bet might be distance, not side. Obviously, both guys are offensively blessed. I'm just telling you that when an older fighter starts to get hit with shots, and that's where we are with Golovkin's career. Let's just be blunt. When an old guy starts to get hit with shots, when an old guy has a problem with body shots, right, folks? He looks as bad against Murata in taking body shots as he did in the second Canelo fight. Well, I'm just telling you, when you're facing a blessed puncher like Canelo, both of these guys are blessed punchers, your opponent is going to be trying to take you out from the opening bell. Murata tries to take out Golovkin in this fight from the opening bell. Right? That third Canelo-Golovkin fight. And keep in mind, Golovkin at one point gets hit in the body during the second fight, and you see his legs wilt a little bit. Again, forget the facial expression. These guys could get shot and look like they're in line at Walmart, right? You know, not fazed, right? But sometimes the body betrays you, right? You get hit, you're looking tough, your legs wiggle a little bit. I thought I saw that in the third fight against Canelo. I get the feeling somebody's going to get stopped. Because if you're Golovkin and you know your defense is waning, you're going to think, okay, well, how can I win this fight? I'm not going to be out here outboxing this young lion. If he's landing big shots, I've got to land big shots. I've got to take this guy out. Also, from the Golovkin side of the ledger. And understand, I'm on the Golovkin side of the ledger. I thought Golovkin clearly wins the first fight. I thought the second fight was closer, but I thought Golovkin won that fight too. If I'm on the Golovkin side of the ledger, how am I going to trust the judges? Right? I could be looking as good as Usyk looked against Anthony Joshua. In the back of my head, I'm going to think, man, they robbed me twice. I'm a knockout puncher. Am I going to trust the judges a third time here? Right? I'm going to treat the third fight like Tyson Fury treated his second fight against Wilder, where it was clear Fury didn't want to trust anybody. So the play right now, and keep in mind, this can change, because we're going to see Canelo fight Bivol. Maybe we'll see something there. But the play right now for me, in the third Canelo-Golovkin fight, is to expect the fight to end by stoppage. Because the first two fights went the distance, I'm hoping for a high over-under. If I see a 10.5 over-under, okay, hey, I'll be the casino's Huckleberry. I'll just take the under, especially if they're offering good odds. Right? If the casino's slicker than that and lowers it to like 9 rounds or something like that, then at that point, I'm going to think to myself, okay, well, let me play the odds that the casino gives me. Let me take the underdog, especially if the odds makers were unimpressed with the first 3 rounds by Golovkin here. Right, let me take the underdog, which is likely to be Golovkin unless Bivol cuffs around Canelo. Right, and let me play it with the other guy by KO. Right, that bet then gives you the favorite by stoppage, where you would win both halves of the bet if the favorite closes the show early. But understand here, Golovkin's desperate early. Murata comes in as roughing him up. Golovkin decides he has to keep Murata away from him by shooting his jab. So you'll notice he's throwing a lot of crisp jabs at Murata. The first 3 rounds, Murata couldn't care less. He's taking the jab. His logic is, hey, I'm landing hooks. I'll take the jab to land a hook. But what I need for people to understand is what happens if he's fighting someone a little bit more agile than the 36-year-old Murata. Let's say he's fighting a guy who knows how to dodge a jab, or who can try to pull a Mike Tyson and come in underneath the jab. Right? Understand, Golovkin's a little bit taller than Canelo. Canelo can go to the body. Look at Canelo Liam Smith. Look at that fight. Canelo can come in low. What happens if Golovkin is there trying to keep Canelo off of him? And Canelo comes in low, is moving his head, and is throwing wicked hooks to the body with looping shots up top, mixing it in with uppercuts. I'm just telling you, Golovkin's gonna have problems. The later rounds of this fight, you notice that Golovkin's jab was starting to pay off. Right? Murata's just a little bit further away from Golovkin. You notice that Murata had been hit in the face enough by that jab, where he was mindful of it. He wasn't leaping in deep like he was early. That allowed Triple G to extend his arms. Also, let's talk defense for a second. Now, I keep talking about old-timers like Archie Moore and George Foreman. Right? Rather than have what Teddy Atlas calls rabbit ears, which is what Murata has this fight. Murata has his hands like this. Triple G, who can throw longer punches than most and maintain the power of them. Triple G is able to throw left hooks behind the rabbit ears. Right? So this defense doesn't work against Triple G because Triple G can throw long shots with a curve on them. So Triple G is throwing punches that are getting behind the rabbit ears and hitting Murata in the side of the head. Triple G's left hook is a longer left hook than most, and it's landing with regularity in the later part of this fight. Archie Moore, George Foreman, they didn't rely on rabbit ears. Their defense is like this. This is an advanced fighter. Right? Their defense is like this. Floyd Mayweather would have a shoulder high and would have his hand like this. The difference is that if your defense is like this, you're catching Golovkin's left hook because your right glove is up around your ear. It's not hitting you flush like it's hitting Murata. Right? You're actually catching it. An advanced fighter like a Canelo is going to have different defensive moves to deal with Golovkin's left hook. Right? He's going to look at the film of the last 3 rounds of this fight, and he's going to see that Golovkin was able to land that left hook, I thought it was his best punch, with regularity over the last 3 rounds by throwing it behind Murata's guard. Right? And someone is going to say, that's not going to happen to me. I'm going to protect myself in such a way where at least that punch is neutralized. Right? Keep in mind, it's more complicated than that, because if I'm like this, then I'm susceptible to Golovkin's straight right hand, which he also throws with a loop. Right? So everything I say here is easier said than done. But let's just say, in this fight, Golovkin found himself in against a tough guy who was a bit more basic than an Archie Moore. Right? For those who remember the old Mongoose, one of the greatest light heavyweight champions in history, let's remember he knocks down heavyweight champion Rocky Marciano in a fight. right? Just food for thought. So let's just summarize how to beat Golovkin, or how to neutralize part of his game, right? Let's do it in a way that's even more advanced than the Murata way, which dominated the first 3 rounds of this fight. You want to come in low. You want to be mindful of the jab. You need to understand Golovkin needs space, right? We talk about fighting a mid-range hooker. This is a long-range puncher. Golovkin needs space, right? So the worst place to be is far away from Golovkin. You want to crash the pocket. Now, he's going to shoot a jab to keep you outside of the pocket, so you need to come in low. You need to bob and weave. You need to have it so your head is hidden with your shoulders, right? Let me also say this too, and this is something Erickson Lubin found out the hard way. You need to have an arm bar. You need to come in a way, think of Vander Holyfield, where if the guy throws uppercuts because you're coming in aggressively in the pocket, there's something there to block the uppercut, right? You have to have it so the arm bar stops uppercuts to your chin or your temple, right? You want to, because Golovkin is not defensively blessed, you want to dig lefts to his body, right? The body shots are as important as anything else. Let me also point out, too, that when you're fighting a puncher who isn't that great deep inside, if you take away his body, you're taking away his punching power. A guy who's been riddled in the body might not have the punch in the 6th round that he had at the start of the fight, right? If you can throw looping punches from a crouch, think Kenny Norton, right? If you can do that, that's what you want to do. Because Murata here is landing with lefts to the body, and he's landing with right hands up top. You can hit Golovkin. You also want to stay in the pocket. Understand, Golovkin gets energized when he's able to extend his arms. So you don't want to, whatever the ref does, the ref separates you, whatever, you want to get right back in the pocket. You want to be too close for him to extend his arms. And you yourself want to throw uppercuts. Revisit that second Canelo fight. He's landing uppercuts on Golovkin. Right? Father Time is unbeaten. Let's just say it's showing on Golovkin. Right? His reflexes aren't what they once were. He's getting hit flush with shots. Let me also point out, too, that in this modern age where we have access to films, opponents are figuring out that they don't want to be Vanis Martirosyan. They don't want to be outside on Golovkin, because Golovkin throws his best shots from the outside. Rather, you want to crowd Golovkin. This is combat. And let me just point out that if you're able to crowd Golovkin, the chances of a fight not going the distance are amplified. Murata here, who himself, again, is 36, gets a little tired. Right? He goes all out the first 3 rounds. Then you notice he starts to take his foot off the gas because Golovkin is pumping a good jab. That's a mistake. I would have preferred Murata holding Golovkin, right? Coming inside, making this a phone booth fight. Don't give the guy a chance to extend his arms. Understand, too, Murata was landing big shots. He couldn't keep the first 3 rounds going, and in my opinion, that cost him the fight. Those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours. Hey, we're all boxing experts, right? You know, if you're gambling your money on these fights, your opinion matters, right? I'm not a trainer. I'm just a guy watching fights. I thought Golovkin was getting roughed up the first 3 rounds. I thought Murata even looked stronger than Golovkin the first 3 rounds. I thought Murata made a mistake slowing down a little bit in round 5. He should have gone for it. He had everything going his way. He's winning rounds. He's landing big shots on his opponent. And he's fighting in front of his crowd, right? The fight was in Japan. The fight was in his backyard, right? Even if you're a little tired, at that point you have to say to yourself, hey, it's now or never. I'm off to a great start in this fight, even if I think to myself, man, I can't fight at this pace and last 12 rounds. You've got to then say to yourself, well, I'm not going to let this fight last 12 rounds. Knockout or bust. Unfortunately, Murata thought to himself, okay, I'm a little tired. Let me box a little bit with this guy. Big mistake. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. I look forward to your comments. Thanks for stopping by.